Welcome to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast with Nicole Merritt and Dr. Robert Zeitlin.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I was just thinking about something. With school starting up again, there's always this question in my mind of what is school really for? You know,
Right.
Are we teaching reading and math? Are we teaching, how to get along? Are we teaching how to communicate? Are we teaching manners? What do you think?
Right. It's funny you asked that question this morning because my 2.5-year-old asked me too. I said, "You got to go to school." She said, "Why? Why I got to go to school?" She asked me the same thing this morning, and I'm like, "To learn." But yeah, no. I mean, you don't have to send your kids to preschool, right? That's a choice. I have sent all of mine to school around age 2.5. And I personally have just felt like their development kind of skyrocketed since starting there. Whether it was social, my son was a little bit quiet, kind of kept to himself. Now he's like, class clown, so very gregarious. For my oldest, it really helped her with the potty training. And then my youngest is just moving through the classes like she owns the joint. So for us, I don't know. School does so much. But do you have a different opinion?
Oh, no, I think there's a lot of, I think school was set up to do certain things, but I think about this a lot. I think about what purpose it's currently serving. Our kids went to school at 2.5. Honestly, they, if they could have said it clearly, they could have looked at us and said, I've had enough of you. I need to learn from other people now.
Right.
And the opportunity to learn in a social environment, to hear from teachers, to have a structure set up. These are all things that really benefit our kids. When I think about what school's for, I think about the boundary of do families use school to help educate their kids? Do families outsource to schools to educate their kids? At what point do schools say, I can't do this? Because I've looked a lot at the history of school and education, and it's amazing actually over the last century or maybe 120 years, we've added more and more things to school. It used to be simply reading and writing and math.
Right.
But then it became physical education, and then it became health class, and then we started doing lunch, and then we started doing this and teaching about this and adding all these components. And we just burden the schools with so much. I think it's at the point where schools are going to start pushing back on parents and saying, listen, this is your responsibility, not ours.
Right. And you made me think of an article that we came across. I think it was a Portuguese school basically sent a letter home to the parents saying, we don't teach manners here. You do that at home.
Wow.
You teach your child how to eat at the lunch table. You teach your child, how to address a teacher or a person in an authority position. And I don't know, I don't know how I felt about it. In my home and in my personal beliefs and opinions, I'm very big on manners. From the moment my kids are born, it's say thank you. I just gave you the breast milk. Say thank you.
Right.
It starts early and it never stops. And I'm that annoying parent that I'll be like, tell Mr. Robert thank you, and I'll keep saying it until my son says it, because I feel like you have to be repetitive and kind of be on it for it to just become this kind of natural reflex. So I'm big on doing it in the home, but I don't think that it's we don't touch that at school sort of thing.
You'd like the school to reinforce it.
Right. And I mean, there's different levels. At my children's preschool, which is not common, I don't believe, they have a manners class every Monday. A
Wow.
manners teacher comes in, and just this Monday, my son had a sticker on that said, I take my manners with me everywhere. And they learn everything from table manners to birthday party manners to how we act if there's a show, or we're watching a show in a movie theater. And I couldn't be more thrilled that the school offers something like that.
That's great, because it reinforces what you're doing at home.
Correct. I mean, I think that you have to act as a team. I don't think it's, home is home and school is school. I mean, I think there's got to be that communication with your child's teacher, that you're both reinforcing the same principles.
It's funny, from when I was growing up to now, it feels like there's been a small shift in understanding that there are like functional skills that are part of education. Like back then I thought education was purely academics, but I think more and more we're starting to see the value of anything from like vocational training all the way down to manners training or guidance or, it's ironic that actually what we're calling 21st century skills are the kind of superpowers I talk about in my practice. How do you communicate better? How do you collaborate? How are you creative? How are you curious? These are things that new modern versions of schools are taking on. But I think there's a whole functional sort of range of things, from birthday party or go out to a movie manners, that I never thought of in terms of school, but I think more and more. Like, for instance, when we started looking at colleges for our kids, there are some schools that were still in the mode that I went to school, which was very academic, liberal arts, kind of almost was like avoided functional things. There weren't business classes, for instance, at my liberal arts college. There were economics, but like learning about business was something you had to do outside of academics. Right. But nowadays we went looking for one of our kids and they're like, well, what do you want to do? And he wanted to do this very specific thing in communication and marketing, public relations. And so they're like, oh, well, we'll get you an internship, and they're like sort of not teaching to the test, but more like gearing their program to what you want to do in life. Right. And it's like, I don't remember that being around at all when I was a kid.
Right. Instead of fitting them in the box, it's like, oh, you don't fit in this box. Let's create a box that fits you and your dreams and your hopes and wishes and everything.
Right. And there are definitely some schools and colleges that are starting to individualize like that and saying, well, if your major is like sort of in between this and this, then we'll make a new, box, like you said.
Right. It's funny too. But does it go too far? Like, I remember, I don't know if it was a meme or an article, something that said, they should have a class in high school that teaches how to fill out a W-2, that teaches you how to change a tire, that teaches you just how to do your taxes. Like, these why is there not a class in high school that teaches you these independent living skills? And again, I don't know. It's so, I kind of get it, but at the same time, are you taking away from the reading and the writing and the kind of straightforward academics?
So our podcast is about parenting, and it's really interesting you said that, because it's like, if our job as parents is to raise independent adults, right? Yeah. Kids who can change a tire, kids who can do their taxes, kids who balance a checkbook, are responsible with money, at what point do we need help in that effort? We know manners, and we can teach our kids manners and make sure our kids show up at preschool the first day knowing how to say please and thank you and remembering to say please and thank you. And we'll get to apologizing in a second. But what about the skills like balancing a checkbook or changing a tire that might not be our strength, actually? Do we need someone else? Is that something we should rely on school to supplement?
Right. But then you probably have both sides of it. You have the parents saying, well, how do you expect that of me? I work until 6 p.m. My kid has after school, they're doing this, soccer thing. We have this small amount of time that we're together, and you want me to teach them this, you're putting so much pressure on me. And the school's like, look at all the pressure we have on us. We not only have your child, we have all these other kids, and we have to teach them all of this. And now you want us to do this? So you can see how both sides are how do you expect more of me?
Yeah. And not to sound too cynical, but getting back to that, what is school for? Our kids are in after school programs and doing sports and doing all this stuff, in one sense, because what school is for right now is to get into a good college and to ensure a safe future, right? And it's kind of like this top-down pressure from like, you have to do all this stuff to get into college, right? Or you have to do all this stuff to guarantee that you're going to be okay in a changing economy, a changing global economy, right? You need to like learn Mandarin. You need to be multi-talented. You need to play an instrument and get a scholarship. You need to do this, do that. And I think it's one of the things that school's for that people don't talk about very often, which is that school is for preparing kids for the next step so they can compete with their peers, not just in a workforce, but compete with their peers. And I think it's getting a little messed up, honestly, because I don't think it's necessarily preparing kids for what they need to do in the future of work. I'm not sure. I think the future of work requires more of the things I said before, like collaboration and communication. I'm not sure, being expert on the violin or knowing 6 languages is actually what they're going to need for the 21st century.
Do you think any or more, and I ask you this because I'm completely unaware because my children are younger, like more companies are willing to hire those without college degrees? Do you know?
I don't know. I privately think the idea of like the necessity of having a college degree is right at a tipping point right now. And yeah. I think I would answer your question no right now, that I think companies are requiring that depending on the industry.
Right.
But I'm not sure in 5 years if my answer would be as strong a yes or no. Right. And I think, like I said before about knowing 6 languages, I think there's something very, very critical about walking in to applying for a job and knowing another language. Right. I don't mean knowing 6 languages and like outsmarting the best kid in your class so you can get into that college. I mean like doing something really strong and functional. If you're in an extracurricular activity and you take a leadership position, learn about leadership, dive in, have something to talk about, and have something to build on, build on your strengths, but not necessarily just like fill out a resume, just to fill in a resume.
Right. It's tough. I mean, I know so many adults that went to school for a certain career, and then all of their experience, post-grad was that. And now they're, midlife and like, I hate what I'm doing. I hate my job. But, it's all I know. It's where all my experience is. It's where my degree is. So nobody's going to hire me to do anything else. And it's sad, it's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And like we've said before, it has an impact on everyone around you. It has an impact on your friends, has an impact on how you feel the time you're not working, has an impact on your family. Right. Being stuck in a job that you've trained really hard for and you have a lot of investment in, and recognizing that's not what you want to do is a really, really tough place to be.
Yeah, I think that you and I, though, are good examples of it's never too late to find or hone your passion and your dream and to go after it. And I think that as parents, if we raise our children with that belief, then even if they become that adult that, like my degree is criminology and psychology. I tried law school, obviously that's not writing, but look what I found and look what it does for me. Yes, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that and be home with my children because thankfully my husband goes to work every day. But I just think you have to have that kind of underlying belief that I'm still going to find a way to make myself happy and to pursue a passion. And whether or not that turns into my career or is this huge money making, thing for me, that doesn't matter as long as it's doing something for me.
It's not just doing something for you, but if you think about it, like you found your passion and it's doing something for other people, people who read your pieces, people who listen to this podcast, people who get a kick out of your memes and have a moment of levity in their day, not to mention the wisdom, like the article that you just published that got really widely spread about like 32 things you figured out so far in your life. These are things that are not only satisfying for you, but they're also helping people, and so it's really cool. The flip side of what I said before, when you asked about like being stuck in a job, it's a really tough time to be stuck in a job because industries are changing and it's really hard to sort of retool and figure out what you're supposed to do. On the other hand, we're living in a really unique time where we can do things like this, with very little cost and a few hours a week, launch a podcast, start a blog, start writing, create online businesses, create ways to connect with other people and learn things. There's so many learning opportunities out there, from Khan Academy to webinars to, a million ways you can retool what you want to do in your passion really quickly nowadays. And that's a really unique thing about the time that we're living in.
Right. Now I know you have kind of a unique idea for a school, right? I
do.
Can you share a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I've been thinking about, so I was sitting around a table with a bunch of educators and my daughter a few years back. And there was a meeting that was supposed to be held to talk about her strengths and to develop a program for the next year of what we're going to do with her strengths. And I felt like no one was really talking about her strengths. They were filling out papers, and they're filling in what's the goal and who's going to check with her and how are we going to judge this and how we're going to rate this. And here you had this kid who, in my humble opinion, is an amazing, has just incredible potential. And no one was asking her what she wanted to do. And no one was asking her like how she wanted to exercise these strengths. If it didn't fit into the course that they had planned or the teacher they had available, it wasn't going to work. So that launched a whole new line of thinking where I imagined sort of a flipped version of that meeting, where what if adults were sitting around a table getting out of a kid's way so they can exercise the strengths and the passions and the interests that they have, and the adults were figuring out how to line up behind them and be the wind in their sails. What would it take to do that? And once I started thinking about that, which is actually, if you think about it for a minute, a really huge challenge. We have all these structures. We have schools, we have unions, we have administrators, we have bus schedules, we have fields, we have whole townships that are geared around a school district. But if you don't need half that stuff and you can get it out of the way and knock down some walls. So I started to design a school that would do that actually let go of a lot of the trappings of what we consider school right now. And I'm still in the planning phases, but I'm talking with some people about how to build it.
I think that sounds absolutely amazing, and it sounds like the type of school I would want to send my children to. So I wish you the absolute best of luck with that, because I think it's a killer idea, and I can't wait to see it come to fruition.
Thanks. Well, I'm partnering with some people who also have other ideas about education. Mostly they're thinking about the future of work. Like, we're not really preparing our kids, not to mention we're boring the crap out of them in school. We're not really preparing them for what we'll really need in the future. And I'm coming at it from the kid perspective. There's nothing, unfortunately, there's nothing less kid-centric than a lot of the schools that I've worked in, that my kids have gone to. And if we really turn that model around and we look at the power that these kids have, and we actually built from the inside out, we could do amazing things.
Right. And I think if you also at the right schools, and which I wholeheartedly believe both my younger children are in and my oldest, if you let the teachers talk, let the teachers share with them your ideas. I think so many times they get muffled or muzzled or put on the back burner, and their voices need to be heard because they have some terrific ideas as well.
Totally agree. I remember sitting in graduate school and looking around at my classmates and thinking, we're sitting here being lectured at for 2 hours, and I have a wealth of knowledge sitting right around me in this class. Like, what would it take to just stop and be able to access all of that wisdom and learn from each other? Right. And I've done a couple exciting things that have been more of a peer-to-peer as opposed to sort of a top-down learning experience. And it has been just so eye-opening, amazing. And, we can talk about them in another episode, but I think that's where the future is. We have a lot of wisdom around us, our teachers, other kids, other peers that we could really benefit from. So I think there's a lot of conversation about what school could be. But right now, I like the idea of like starting to explore where's the boundary between what school is, what's the family's responsibility, and starting to have that conversation, because I think it's really important.
Yeah. And anybody that's listening, if you have some thoughts or ideas on that, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at worstparentpod@gmail.com. And we'd love to take your impressions of what we're talking about or take your questions into a future episode. So feel free to send us your questions.
Definitely. Well, this was great, Robert. We'll talk again soon.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss an episode.